Hey guys. Hey guys.
Hello.
Looks like we need to get. Oh, Joe's back in. Okay.
Okay.
Joe, where is that? New Zealand?
I don't know. It's the second page of a Google search, so probably nobody's ever seen it.
Okay, very good.
Does not look like Sleepy Hollow Road.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's not. Where Old
Okay.
Sleepy Hollow meets.
Oh, it's right at Mechanical Lake.
Yeah.
Very good. Yeah.
It looks
Yeah.
a little bit like
All
that.
right. Good.
All right, Gina, let us know when we're back, if you would.
I'm just waiting on Kasama,
Oh, my bad.
and then I'll hit record.
Yeah, thanks. It's like herding cats here.
Oh, yes. One of the manuscript pages my father gifted me, by the way. Thank you. So when I was
Amazing.
walking around churches as a 16-year-old and, not home with my teenage friends, but I'm fine.
That's amazing. A manuscript up.
No, yeah. So see the whole, it's,
Nice.
yeah,
nice.
Cool.
illuminated pages. So there we go.
Lovely.
Yep. Kind of neat.
What is it, Rich? I can't make it out from here.
So it is actually it's a manuscript from a book of prayer. And as is that one, complete with the music and those sort of things. So, kind of from Book of Hours, illuminated books of the Middle Ages. So,
Wow.
That's some cool
I'm
stuff.
just gonna grab some water. I'll be right back.
okay.
Go for it. Looks like we've got a second here.
It's like the Book of Kells kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
It's made of
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
like that
Yep.
beautifully illuminated.
Exactly. Yep. So, yeah, kind of neat. I did point out to him that I felt it was a little bit irreverent that I didn't think a confessional was where you were supposed to just change your film in your camera, but
Dark space, so you could
start, of course.
even not exposing the film.
Yep, exactly. So, so yep, good stuff.
Multi-purpose space.
Exactly. Yep, good memories and things. So good memories. Good. Good memories.
Kasama's coming.
Very good. How about all of your families holding up okay, hopefully?
Yeah.
Little cabin fever, but yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe there's a lot of cabin fever, to be honest.
Yes. Yeah.
Feels like it changes every day. Who's up, who's down.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep, exactly. Yeah. So I think we talked about, it's like someone said, what day is it? And I was like, I don't know, today, right?
Yeah.
Almost a time warp. Yeah, so
Well, 5 weeks is it's such a long period of time. I mean,
Yeah.
And just to think that this is going to be the equivalent of a summer, right? So 2 months at least. It's an odd.
yeah, it is. It really is. And in terms of where we're at, and we've all talked about it kind of independently, is that no one's going to be the same. And I think especially education. And and I'm excited about that in the long term. And we're certainly dealing with the short term. Okay, Del, you have to go away, but go on.
Gina,
I'm
we've
gonna
got the whole
hit
gang.
record.
We can move?
Great.
Yep, go ahead.
Okay. And we're back.
Great, good.
Rich, lead us, please.
Excellent, thank you. The reality is, despite the fact that we have not had our students and teachers in school, there's still a great deal of work that's going on. And some of that also orients in terms of our energy performance contract, as well as what we are looking to do in terms of the refurbishment of some of our facilities. And so I want to give a brief update on, both of those endeavors. Number one is, as we know, we are at a pivotal point in regards to our tennis courts. And, that pivotal point is one of, what are we going to do with them? because we've all agreed and has been provided and great data provided to us from our architects. We're at a point with our tennis courts where we either have to refurbish them to green space, and we know some approximate costs to that, an escalation of $250,000, or we have to put them back to what their original intent was, which was as facilities for students, staff, community to utilize them. Certainly for tennis, but as we now know, in more of a multi-generational sense. So we're continuing to go forward with that. Site work, they have done their geothermal testing. We have some preliminary documents, and we will be able to provide some more guidance on that. What I'm wrestling with is reaching out, and it's vital that we have community involvement in this. And so I'm really looking and working with some of our partners to see how best we can orchestrate that in a safe and social distance fashion. So we're continuing that. I think perhaps more importantly, we talked about, and switching gears a little bit, we've talked about the EPC and we're excited about its prospect. I think now more than ever, what the energy performance contract and its potentiality has shown us is how we can really serve our community. And what I mean by that is part of our energy performance contract, we're pairing it with a generator. And currently, this is bad, what's going on. We would not be able to serve our community in the manner that we could, because we don't have a generator that runs our building. And so, if we were forced to be a hospital site or an emergency shelter, we're not able to do that. Under the with the tennis courts, I apologize, with the tennis courts is paired the generator, we would be able to do those things. So, we're not just talking about recreation when we're talking about kind of the tennis court project. We're talking about pairing it with something that to me is absolutely vital for the health and the safety of the community. So certainly more to follow on that. Switching gears to the energy performance contract, at a time when we're talking about money being tight and the need to really ensure that we're making smart investments of our taxpayers' dollars, I think that the energy performance contract is perhaps the best way that we can do that. We know that for every dollar that we invest, we are going to be recouping that, not only in energy savings, but in carbon footprint savings and in the education of our students. A couple of the things that were outliers on the energy performance contract was really looking at the longevity of our roof. And BBS, our architects who are doing our building condition survey, have ascertained with the roofing company that we have 10 to 12 years at a minimum left upon our roof. And so that we would be able to install, the solar panels on pads to ensure that. I'm working with both Kara, and Kara, who's the awesome person who helps us really communicate and promote what we're doing. Kara Matthews, as well as Emily from BBS, as well as our day automation contacts, Josh and Derek, to create a pamphlet and a brochure that really explains to our public what we want to achieve with our energy performance contract, how we're going to pay for it, and what we are asking from them with their vote. And as you know, what we're asking of our public is the ability to, in essence, get our fair share of state aid. And because with a positive vote, we increase our state aid by 10%. One question that may come up is, okay, well, it's wonderful to say you're going to get an additional 10% state aid, but in these tough budgetary times, will you actually get it? The NYSED and the governor have already answered that question to date. And what they have said is that building projects and energy performance contracts that are already planned and in the hopper, for lack of a better term, will be funded in the same manner. In particular, energy performance contracts, because remember, with an energy performance contract, you're not just replacing something, but you're replacing it with or augmenting it with something that is going to be more energy efficient.
One question around this, and I'm just trying to figure out the engineering behind it. Sorry. I just, in terms of sizing out the generator and the tennis courts, the energy, I mean, there's a tremendous amount of math involved in figuring out what size generator we're going to need based on the new energy performance contract and any thought around any additional building things that we might do. I know, for example, air conditioning was at one point mentioned by a previous administration for the gym. I don't know if that's still on the table or not. So trying to size this thing seems like it's going to be, well, it'll be beyond me anyway. I don't know. Are the engineers looking at that, Rich, or are you still kind of, is it early stages still?
Yeah, they're absolutely, I mean, they're hip deep in it right now. In fact, we're going to have a team come down next week specifically to look at the mathematics behind our energy usage. What's interesting is that even though solar gives us ready power and things, in order to ensure that we have power at all times, we have to have a generator that its requisite wattage would be able to handle it. So we are doing that mathematics, and we're also anticipating the future because we absolutely have no way of knowing really what loads are going to be other than looking and saying, okay, here's a best guess. I know that in my previous district, when we sized our generators, what we did is said, okay, here's where we are. Here's the pipe dream for the future, and this would be, things that could be, vital and necessary. And we did the math behind that, and then we added 10%, and that certainly worked. What's really interesting with the generator is that you have to be really careful about load capacity. And what I mean by that is this: is that let's say you need, and I'm going to get the terms wrong. Let's say you need 50 kilowatts. Oh, wonderful. But in 10 years, we may need 75. Okay, great. We're going to need 75. Well, you could certainly look and say, okay, add 10% and get a 95 or get 100. Many people say, oh, well, just double it and get the biggest generator you can. What's interesting with generators is that they have to run at load capacity. Otherwise, they actually do a disservice to their engines and things. And so, Joe, you're spot on in terms of making sure that the math is really pretty accurate in that regard. I'm confident we have some partners who are doing that.
Thank you.
That was clear. Other questions? Okay.
Thanks, Rich.
The only other aspect I would say in terms of this is that really, and in particular, I'm focusing upon the EPC. When we're talking about times where there may be some financial unrest, a lot of times the initial knee-jerk reaction is, oh, stop this, don't do anything. I really, and sometimes if you're looking at putting up a Taj Mahal and everything is has no substance to it. If you were just talking about, gardening or fascia or what have you, I would say, yes, you have to hold back. But when you're talking about doing things that are safety oriented, community oriented, and then also, pay you back on better than $1.4 to every dollar spent, that's at the time where you really have to look at your investments and say, this is a smart utilization of district and community funding, and we need to continue to go forward, because ultimately this is going to equate to a reduction in our energy consumption, which will result in a reduction in our bottom line, which will result in providing health and safety opportunities for our community. So just want to kind of leave the Board of Education with that.
Yeah, I thought I'd just follow that up, Rich. I think the communication is going to be very important because, you know, you've done a lot of research into this. You've brought a lot of information to the board. We've looked at this a long time. It makes complete sense for this district. And in fact, as a board, we can vote to just spend the money to do the EPC. And as you pointed out, economically, it's good for the district because we're going to get all the money back and more over time. So it's all about getting support from the community so that we get that state aid. I think that communication is very important because if we didn't need that, then we already know that this is a good idea, that it's an incredibly good idea for the district, that it's going to save the district a lot of money over the long term. It's all about just getting the community support so that we get that state aid.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I'll just piggyback on what Charlie said, that with regard to the tennis courts, I do appreciate the sensitivity with which you're approaching the subject, Rich, because we are talking about, you know, spending money at a time when families are hurting and our economy's hurting and you know, people are dealing with a lot right now. But if we look at the longer picture, we are charged with looking at the overall financial health of the district and the facilities. And I think, you know, you're pointing out the generator is a huge asset to our community going forward for pretty significant reasons. So we could house, you know, disaster relief or be able to even hold school when we had, you know, bad storms this week, for example, and a lot of our community was out of power. So without that generator, you know, we wouldn't be able to provide the food that we normally do. So I think balancing the interests of our community members and acknowledging that this is a difficult time for a lot of people while also trying to move forward with our district business is an important balance to reach.
Well said.
Rich, those are nuanced messages to be sure, but at the same time, they need to be kind of concise and clear.
Yep.
What is your view on the best way to sort of get that message out to the community?
So, you know, I am currently working with Kara and Emily and Josh and Derek from Day Automation. And we are, we absolutely feel that we have to target each and every one of, you know, in essence, what have become established and normal communicative practices. So we are certainly developing a brochure, but it's also vital that we, you know, harness technology in terms of, you know, our email blasts, as well as, you know, Derek and I are working on, you know, hopefully providing a, you know, a virtual seminar presentation on this. We had planned to take our show to different places in a physical sense, and so we want to really do that in a virtual sense as well. You know, this is an amazing community, and I absolutely, you know, feel without a shadow of doubt, when provided with the correct information and data, that they're going to support what we do, and it's important that we get that to them.
I love the idea of a virtual community meeting of some sort. Yeah. Great suggestion, Rich.
Yeah.
Other comments or thoughts on this? Okay. So do we want to handle the budget piece last, or do we want to move to the consent agenda last? Any preference?
Budget, let's touch on that.
Move through it.
Great, good. You know, thank you much. You know, my intent with our budget presentation for tonight is just to kind of provide a really basic overview to let you know the steps that we have taken administratively at the direction of the Board of Education. Understanding that you know, within our next meeting, we will have our finalized documents and recommendations for the board. So I want to provide you with what we've done to date. As we know, there's been some flux and change in our state aid, and the original runs provided by the governor, you know, got trumped by this wonderful thing called COVID-19 that are all dealing with on a daily basis, and whether that be as society or as community or as a family. And it's real. It's had a very direct impact on everything, and especially in terms of, you know, where we're going to be with our finance. Right now, we know that we had a second run from the governor, and so what we are doing is adjusting our budget in correlation to what we know our revenue is going to be. Right? There's two parts of a budget. There's revenue and there's expenditures, and they both have to balance. You can't overspend, and we know that. At the direction of the Board of Education from our last meeting, we had indicated administratively that in some of our initial thoughts and projections that we were above where our revenue would be. The Board of Education directed us administratively to come back and provide a balanced budget. And to be clear, some of the issues that the board wanted to make sure that we were doing was to not reduce any educational component or support to our students or staff members. And so we have taken these new numbers and knowing that some of these numbers are still in flux, and we have honed in even more on our budget, which again, we will be able to present in its totality at our next meeting. We took some items out of our budget, which were in essence one-shot expenditures. And what I mean by a one-shot expenditure is an expenditure that is not reoccurring year from year. Okay? A salary is an ongoing expenditure. However, if you're looking at a piece of equipment that you need and you only buy such a piece of equipment once every 20 years, et cetera, that's a one-shot. And so what I have done is taken out of the budget some one-shot expenditures with the intent of asking the board, when we know our finances a little more, to see if we can purchase it this year from some of our projected fund balance. And in doing so, reducing our budget so it's in line with our revenue. But again, I want to stress at the direction of the board, we will be providing absolutely everything that our students need to be successful, and that our teachers need to do their jobs, while at the same time being very mindful of the fiscal reality of the world that we're living in right now, of kind of flux and change. So, we feel we're well on the way to achieving this, and I look forward to presenting a finalized budget to the Board of Education at our next meeting.
Great, look forward to that.
Just a very quick request, Rich,
Yes, sir.
and I appreciate that. The roughly 165,000 that we're going to use to pay for those one-shot items,
Yep.
I thought it would be helpful to the board and the community if you, for the next presentation, add a page which lists the one-shot items.
Absolutely.
All right. I think it's just helpful to identify what those items are that we're paying for with that carryover. Thanks.
Good call.
Yep. No, very good. Yeah, and I think that, we've always been, told there's always been total transparency. And I think that'll be very important for our, for our public to know that okay, these are monies well spent, and this is why. And so, yeah, thank you. Great suggestion.
Other questions or comments? Just a quick one for me on the draft, just page 14. If we could just put a header explaining for lay folks what that is. It's basically the bond schedule when they're callable.
Yep.
Just to the uninitiated, that may not be entirely clear, which I think is most of us.
It's tough for the initiated.
Real. Yes,
So-
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So if there's nothing further on the budget for now, we'll discuss it more fully in our next session. We'll move on to the consent agenda. And with that, I'll make a motion to approve a consent agenda.
Second,
All in favor?
Yes.
Thanks. Now on to consideration of the consent agenda items. which include new business.
Does it matter if we don't know when our election is going to be for appointing the inspectors?
Yeah, I think it says TBD.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, apparently it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But I think it says
You're
TBD.
right.
Yeah.
And that's a good point. We don't know as yet when either our budget vote or our elections are, or the manner that they will occur. We know anytime after June 1st. I will continue to keep the board and more importantly, with due respect, the community apprised of all these things.
Rich, the only question I have is if, and again, I'm just playing like, who knows what's going to happen. If there's a radical change, the elections are either carried out or if they're delayed for an unspecified period of time, are we locked into anything with this or not?
No, not as yet. I will tell you that one of the aspects that has been discussed and in terms of a budgetary aspect was, you know, the ability of a board or what have you just to kind of pass a budget, providing it was under the 2% tax cap. And remember, the maximum tax cap that we are dealing with right now is 0.58. So about a little more than half a percentage point. But at the direction of the Board of Education, I advocated very strongly at State Ed that a community budget vote and a community election for the school is probably the most democratic process in the nation, where each and every vote is very significant. And so I and other superintendents in the area lobbied very, very strongly to make sure that even if it's in a different shape, manner, or form, that we have that process. Our community deserves to vote and needs to vote. It's vital. As I said again, you know, it's probably the most democratic. It's probably the most democratic process in the nation.
Fully agree.
Well, I'll make a motion to approve the items on the consent agenda.
I'll second. All in favor?
Yes.
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 Great. And so with that, the next meeting is scheduled for the 29th.
Al,
Yes.
would you indulge another executive session to discuss a personnel item?
Happy to. So I'll make that motion. If I can have a
Wait.
second.
Can I just, before we do that, our next meeting is actually April 21st, which is the BOCES administrative annual vote that we vote on. So
Okay.
it's just that, that's all we're going to be doing that night.
Okay. Thank you for interjecting, Gina.
Also, one other quick thing. I just have a question. Given that we don't know exactly when our budget vote might be, do we know when we have to adopt a budget? Do we know what our deadline is?
We do not know that as of yet. Guidance has still been April 30th, but it's in flux right now.
So what is our next meeting after the 16th, after the 20th?
21st. It's the 29th. 29th.
So it is the 29th. So
Yeah.
basically at our discussion of the budget at the next time, at this point, we're looking to possibly adopt a budget.
Right.
Well, we could try to discuss it on the 21st. We could add an agenda item.
Correct, yes.
Okay. Fair enough. All right, thank you.
Gina, is that like a 5-minute meeting, the BOCES annual vote?
Yes, it is, unless you want to add something to the agenda, but it was just a special meeting. They have that meeting.
Bless you.
They have
Bless
their
you.
meeting that night, so we have to do our meeting the same night.
Okay. All right. So for the record here, there's no further business. So we're not going to go back into public for any other purpose than to end the meeting.
Right.
Yeah. And and with that, we'll go into exec. Gina, thank you for everything tonight.
Sure.
Thank you, Jan.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gina.
You're welcome.